Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Newsline. It's now time to considerations right here in studio, all focused on the State of the Nation address that we anticipate from President William Ruto, which he will deliver to Parliament and the nation this Thursday. So just borrowing from what he mentioned last year during his 2023 State of the Nation address, the economy will play a key part. And that's why we had just touched on it a little bit earlier on, highlighting how on paper, we seem to be doing well. Inflation is at 2.7%, down from 9.2%. That was in September 2022. Fuel prices are down 6.7% for diesel, 4.7% for petrol. Exchange rate has improved from 158 Kenya shillings to the US dollar to 127 shillings thereabout. The gains are clearly evident, but on the ground, it seems to be a different narrative. So we'll be trying to take a look at this irony of Kenya's low inflation, but empty pockets. And I'm still joined in studio by the two esteemed guests. Thank you so much for your patience. Diana Gishengo, the Executive Director at the Institute for Social Accountability, and Eric Theuri, the immediate former LSK President. Theuri, what do you make of this irony of Kenya's low inflation but empty pockets? She hinted at it earlier. Inflation is down, but when you talk to people who are supposed to be singing praises due to the inflation being down, they seem to be agitated, and you hinted at it earlier. What do you make of this irony?
I'm not as qualified as Diana to speak about these things.
Yeah.
But naturally, you know, when an economy is doing well, several sectors of the economy are doing well, it is not something that can be hidden. So what kind of an economy are we? We are an economy that largely is driven by a very good percentage of digital investments, agriculture. We are not doing very well on manufacturing. We are doing a little bit well on tourism. So you can then begin to perhaps appreciate why we have this feeling, because for the younger generation, there is a younger segment that is in the digital market that is actually doing very well. But in terms of employment, as a result of other issues that we are facing, key among them being some of the taxes that we have that are leading to companies closing or reducing their workforces as a result of the increases in taxation, especially on the employee benefits and the formal sector. You then have this problem that on one hand, there are certain sections of the economy that are largely driven by the informal sector that obviously do not contribute so much to the tax base that are doing well. And then you have this formal sector that largely contributes to the formal, to the tax base, that are not doing very well as a result of should I say, loosely over-taxation to compensate for the tax base that is outside.
Yes.
And you can see this in the proposals that have now been brought on board that are making an attempt to try and broaden that tax base with a view of getting the informal on board. And you know, one of the things about the taxation is that it is not only used for purposes of generating income or generating revenue to run government activities and support social economic activity within the country. It can also be used as a means of incentivizing economic growth. And that is an area in which the government has not done very well.
Okay.
And perhaps in this address, we can then begin to see which are the areas that the government is targeting as intended to incentivize growth within the economy with a view of addressing this challenge that we are facing. So when you see a lot of people complaining that we do not have money in our pockets, you can begin to understand why. Because if you go to the informal sector, they are probably not complaining as much as. The only problem is that as a result of this shrinking disposable income, it is affecting the other side of the economy.
Okay.
The other challenge that we have seen is that the government has not been spending much. There is a lot of money that is still tied in pending bills. I think you just saw Treasury telling us, was it Monday, that they have now paid counties up to, the only remittance they haven't done is for this month of November. But you have to remember that they were paying from June. So the financial year closed before all the remittances had been been paid to the counties. So what does that mean? It means that for 4 months or for 5 months, the counties have not been able to pay any of the people, its suppliers and whatever, and that has a ripple effect on everyone else. So if government is not paying, yet government is the largest consumer of services, if the employees of government or employees who are in formal employment are facing a reduction in their disposable income, and then it has several knock-on effects that, in my view, then begin to explain why people are feeling they do not have money in the pockets. But also, there is also something else. We have a challenge with regards to the funding of students in the universities. We now have another challenge with regards to the question of provision of healthcare. So what does that mean? It means that those who are in formal employment have to go away, have to dig in much deeper to support those who are in school, those who are having challenges with access to healthcare. And so that income, the disposable income that is shrinking, is even being subjected to further hits from areas where they knew or had in their planning, you knew that HELP will take care of something. Now it is not, so you have to step in. You knew that NHIF was going to take care of something. Now it is not, so you have to step in. So all those things have a ripple effect, and I think that what the task that the president then has is to try and to assure the country that he is in touch with the heartbeat of what is happening, and that he has not only the rhetoric, but he also has concrete action plans, and those plans will be evaluated on the basis of how effective they have been, but also will be evaluated on the basis of how have they performed in their previous promises for people to believe, or for people to have a certain level of predictability that these plans would then be implemented.
Interesting. As we come to you, Diana, we just want to hear from President William Ruto what he had to say on an issue that's close to his heart, the Hustler Fund, which is set to hit 2 years on the 30th of November. It was meant to give Kenyans access to affordable credit, a financial inclusion fund of sorts. Let's listen in to what he had to say on the public's response to this fund.
The public response to the Hustler Fund has exceeded most initial projections and surprised even the most hardened skeptics. By the end of last month, the fund had disbursed Kenya shillings 36.6 billion, and in savings, 2.3 billion.
Statistics from last year, of course, we'll hear from him because that's an issue close to the administration's heart. But according to data from the State Department of MSMEs, more than half of the borrowers have defaulted on the repayments. That's totaling to around 11 billion shillings. So, Diana, briefly looking at, those statistics and the default rate, is the Hustler Fund truly viable? Should the government come up with a legal framework, because we heard about this, a legal framework of sorts to enforce Hustler Fund repayment from M-Pesa? Yeah.
No. Why pay?
It's a loan.
Said who? From who? How is a government that is so indebted at the risk of default on its own liabilities giving credit? And this is move away from the default of the Hustler Fund. The Kenyan government borrows half of its debt from domestic banks, where it is repaying at an interest rate of between 15 to 25 in treasury bills and bonds. And central bank overdrafts. We are using at least $1 billion a month in overdraft to the central bank.
Okay.
If that is the interest, what is the interest rate for the Hustler Fund that was proposed?
It was less. What was it?
It was supposed to be around 10%.
Yeah.
You get? Who is this? How do I borrow at 20%, then I give Eric a loan at 10%? What would you call me? A fool?
Your words, not mine.
That is what the Hustler Fund is. If we are to heal the problem of access to credit in this country, we must address interest rate, and we must address how government borrows domestically. No bank right now has dedicated people, for those of us who've had a payslip for some time, hey, these bankers and agents, they were our friends. They no longer talk to us. Because why invest in going after Diana, who cannot even take more than $1 million or $2 million of credit? You're not sure. The minute I lose my job, I'll tell you, please check the insurance. Yet you're guaranteed 18% in government treasury bill or bond. Everybody has shifted there. So how if we do not address that fundamental issue, and then what is 11 billion for people who are in the banking sector, the ICT sector, M-Pesa and so on? The banking sector has been the one sector that has consistently been making profit. Not from Kenyans accessing credit, but from government. Who are these shareholders that are allowing banks year in, day out to continue enjoying as fundamental services, freedoms get a dip? So it is a good thing that government officials are the ones who are sharing these statistics, that these people have defaulted. It is the concept, not buyer beware. What is that? It is a self-inflicted injury. When the government set up this, and Kenyans are very bright, they knew this is a political kitty. Okay? So if we get nothing else from this government, at least let us get this particular fund. And remember, what happened? Didn't we forgive people who had defaulted
previously
for under other mobile lending companies? So if that was okay for them, why is it not okay for these people under Hustler Fund? How do we pursue them? How do we pursue them? How much were we giving them initially? We started with small credits. Maybe we need to speak to the person from, was it Liwatoni or somewhere, who had managed to get several hundreds of thousands.
Yes.
But this is a self-inflicted injury.
Okay.
The government should count its losses and put it as part of the contingent liability. Close that fund once and for all. It does not work. It is not logical. It is not helpful.
Okay.
This is something that is supposed to be addressed by the commercial banking sector, the microfinance and cooperative sector,
Okay.
not by government.
Okay.
Government has other services that it ought to be providing, not a hustler fund.
Interesting. Theory, as you come in, I'd like us to take a look at accountability in government just briefly, because just today, cabinet secretaries and PSs signed performance contracts. How do we change the narrative that these performance contracts are mere bureaucratic processes, rituals, or ceremonial formalities, that at the end of the day, it won't carry so much weight in terms of taking a look at the deliverables in a ministry and how certain PS or CS has performed?
You know, we've had the system of performance contracting for a very long time in government. I think from around 2009 there, 2010.
Thereabout, yeah.
And perhaps we have gotten to that point where it is ritualistic. It is intended to portray us as a government that has plans and has a mechanism for tracking the implementation of those plans. And if that were the case, then we would not be having the kind of challenges that we are having. Let me just speak to something that you asked. You know, the Hustler Fund, when it was launched, I remember one of the things that we asked about is, what is the legal framework? And why is it that then you have government coming into an area that it has not specialized in? Because, I mean, the aspect of giving loans to people is something that belongs to private institution, the banking institution. And so, yes, it may have been popular, and yes, it may have been intended to show the hustlers and the people at the bottom that this is our intention.
Okay.
And so, when you look at that, and I wanted to tie it down to performance, when you look at that, if you had then government that was properly focusing on what it should be doing, the first thing that it would have been looking at is, first of all, creating an enabling environment through taxation, through incentives, to ensure that these people can thrive. Because the reality is that there is a reason why banks seek for security.
True.
Because if you give someone a loan, chances are that they will not repay it.
Default, yeah.
There will be default. If there is no enforcement mechanism, there will be default. And that is what has just happened. And so you want to ask yourself that if we were doing proper, let's say, performance management, one of the first questions then should have been, if we give this money, it is not free money, unless it was intended to be free money. So what is the mechanism for ensuring that we can be able to recover that money?
Okay.
And then perhaps a different structure would have been created so that the government sticks to undertaking, creating an enabling environment, and it can create this as a seed fund where people come and, you know, either you are trained in entrepreneurship, you know, something that is intended to ensure that this money would be recovered.
Okay.
So eventually, and I really need to emphasize this, that there is a crisis of trust. There's a trust deficit in this country with regards to the government. And it is because when you look at some of these things that are intended to make sense, that are intended to give you an assurance that yes, times are hard today, but you can hope for a better tomorrow, because there is this action that is being taken and you can see it being implemented, and you can actually believe that when you come to the end of the implementation cycle, things will get better. You know, it's like when you plant and you can see the clouds are gathering, then you know that it is soon going to rain, and then they are flowering, and so you are hungry, but you know that tomorrow you will eat, and so there is a way you can persevere. Okay. But if you have planted and then there are no clouds, and then it rains a bit, and then but before they could flower, you get, and I think that is the state that we are in as a country. And the work of the president now, in my view, is extremely hard, because at the point of getting into office, they could have said, you know, I got in, I found the country like this, and so I'm trying to turn around. I think he doesn't now have that luxury anymore of giving excuses, because even though he may have very good excuses, he is being judged now on the actions that he has taken, what he has said, what he has implemented. And people are trying to see, have we seen the harvest? Can we hope that tomorrow will be better?
Okay, Diana, fight against corruption, and it's been a song time and time again. We're putting the necessary measures in place to ensure that we slay this dragon of graft. The president equally just this year, around July, called for stricter anti-graft laws, saying corruption will soon be concluded, or corruption cases will soon be concluded within 6 months. What do you make of the fight against corruption so far? Is it work in progress? How do we seal those loopholes and ensure there's goodwill in slaying this dragon?
Gosh, how do you slay who you are? Or I don't know. Corruption. I was just looking at the last year's State of the Nation address, and the president, definitely, you've hit the right notes. Hustler Fund, universal healthcare, housing.
Oh, housing as well.
I'm actually looking forward to the updates around housing, because somehow we've managed to pass a specific law on housing levy, and we are paying it, and he keeps talking about it. But the construction sector has, for the first time in many years, faced a decline. Okay? What is this linked to? Could we be creating very, very good and innovative ideas, including how to ensure that the construction sector gets back and is able to boom like it did since 2007. But corruption is the one thing that this government is allergic to. How to address corruption, the government is just allergic to it. It wasn't there in the State of the Nation address. All that was said is that we will deal with, we are respecters of the rule of law, and we are giving the judiciary money. When the president says he will ensure that corruption cases are dealt with within 6 months, how? As who? Corruption, what we need, what the president can do and commit to do, is show that he will address the culture of corruption. He had a very good opportunity when he dismissed, not dissolved, dismissed his own cabinet on account of performance. The Kenyan people had raised issues of integrity and corruption. He would have appointed a cabinet that inspires the confidence that he's serious about addressing corruption.
Okay.
Nothing was done. Now, because of our very high indebtedness and because we must continue to rely on the IMF, the President and the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury have gone to the IMF and said, please come and give us a governance diagnostic. This means tell us everything we need to do to address our governance issues and especially corruption. Do you believe they mean it? Of course not, because nothing has been done so far. EACC is struggling. The DPP continues to withdraw cases, and I have written to the DPP asking for how many cases and why they have been withdrawn around economic crimes. Nothing has happened on that particular front. You asked my president the question of accountability and around institution. Now, the main institution that is supposed to offer accountability and oversight is Parliament. Parliament is the one that is supposed to oversight the president. Because of the Kenya Kwanza Azimio merger, Parliament, now the president has a supermajority. So anything and everything will be enacted. So we are not seeing any form of accountability. These are the people who should be raising issues of accountability around chief education, extrajudicial killings. Our accountability arms is the media, the LSK and lawyers, civil society, and the religious sector. So it has also crowded and shrunk the accountability space for constitutional organs.
All right, Theory, we have to finalize, so I'll beg you to be quite brief. All things said and done, we barely touched on abductions and extrajudicial killings, but recently we had IG Kanja mention, is it up to 27 or 29 people have been abducted, are still missing rather, up to 50 have been abducted. Well, what do you think the president should touch on when it comes to, you know, reeling in on rogue police officers and whatnot? Because they were quite clear while coming to office that gone are the days where extrajudicial killings would happen in the country. In 30 seconds or so, quite briefly, Theory.
You know, it's very difficult to ask a lawyer to be brief.
Well, hold briefly.
But on this one,
yes,
the president will have to, in a way, put his foot down. If he says this should end, it will end.
Okay.
I say this because when you listen to those who have been released, it would appear that they were picked by persons operating either as police officers or who have the same resources as police officers. So it is just a question of the president just saying, this should end, and I believe it will end.
And walking the talk.
Yes.
Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady. Of course, we anticipate what the president will have to say on Thursday, but expectation is rife. We've just tried to dot the I's, cross the T's on a couple of issues he might be touching on. Diana Gishengo, the executive director at TISA, asante sana for your time, and thank you for your input. Eric Theory, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. He's a former LSK president. That's how we wrap up today's edition of Newsline. Remember, there's so much to anticipate in terms of our programming. Trading Bell is coming up next, and it's hosted by Maina Shege, so stay tuned for that. My name is Jesse Rogers. Thank you so much for watching. Good evening.